joining us. I want to go ahead and introduce our speakers for the day. We have a great lineup of speakers. First, we have Bodhi Haraldsson. Good afternoon, Bodhi.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Bodhi has over 20 years of professional and clinical research experience. His clinical experience is wide-ranging and involves being a part of a multidisciplinary team in a rehabilitation hospital, serving as an independent assessor, performing medical and rehabilitation assessments, as well as working with professional and amateur athletes. Bodhi directs research in the field internationally, authors, studies, reviews his peers for professional journals and grant review panels, and maintains a busy part-time private practice. He has both developed and taught curriculum as faculty members in massage therapy programs in British Columbia and Ontario. At present, Bodhi is the Research Department Director for the Massage Therapists Association of British Columbia. So welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Clint Chandler, and he is a recognized leader in the field of massage therapy education, receiving the Jerome Polinsky National Teacher of the Year Award in 2002. Clint has developed and implemented and taught core and advanced curriculum for some of America's leading educational institutions, programs, and publishers, where a number of his courses continue to be taught. His extensive experience spans over 24 years of both clinical practice and teaching experience in massage and manual therapies, with an additional 8 years concentrating on physical rehabilitation. An active participant in research, Clint has also co-authored and published papers examining the effects of massage therapy on chronic tension headaches, carpal tunnel syndrome, and low back pain. As co-principal of Santé Learning Systems, an educational DVD company, Clint has several released video titles addressing palpatory anatomy, as well as tension-type headaches. Clint has also served as a volunteer on numerous professional and scientific committees, and his most recent projects include the creation and launch of 3 mobile apps, MyoQuiz, MyoFinder, and Key Terms, all available at bionexusllc.com, which serve as great resources for students, teachers, and professional therapists. His dedication and enthusiasm for excellence in the professional massage therapy community are prime motivation for his seminars that help teach the advancement of research literacy, teacher development, and technique application. As full-time owner and operator of corrective and restorative massage therapy services, he's located in Boulder, Colorado. So welcome, Clint.
Good morning.
And we also have Martha Brown Menard joining us. Martha, good afternoon, Martha.
Hi.
Martha
happy
is
to be here.
Wonderful. We're so happy to have you. Martha is the principal of Cigna Applied Research, a research and evaluation consulting firm. She is the author of Making Sense of Research, an introductory textbook on research literacy for healthcare practitioners, and it's now in its 2nd edition. A massage therapy and bodywork practitioner for over 30 years, she is currently on the research faculty of Saybrook University in the School of Mind-Body Medicine. She has previously served as Vice President for Granting Operations at the Massage Therapy Foundation and is a former President of the National Certification Board for Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. Her research interests include chronic pain, oncology massage, and educational research related to interprofessional education and collaborative practice. One of her current projects is creating a digital open access repository of case reports in integrative healthcare, and she is a member of the American Evaluation Association. So welcome, Martha.
Thanks, Deb.
So a brief overview of what we're going to cover today is basically into 3 broad topics. Getting started with research, putting research into practice, and then we're going to give you some takeaway tips, some take-home tips to keep current with the LiteraEd chart. So for those of you who weren't with us for the last seminar, the first seminar in the series, we described a little bit about the Academic Consortium for Complementary and Alternative Healthcare. And for those of you who are not familiar, I'm just going to give a brief overview. Basically, we're a broad, multidisciplinary organization that has 5 core professions. So each of these core professions has a programmatic accreditation body recognized by the Department of Education, and one of those core professions is massage therapy. Together, we are tied to about 375 licensed practitioners and about 180 accredited institutions and programs in association with traditional world medicine fields, Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic and integrative health and medicine organizations. And together, we work to advance the values, practice, and disciplines associated with integrative healthcare. So we heard from our speakers in their bios that each of them has an amazing background in research, but each of our speakers had to start somewhere. So I've asked them all to think back to when you first became interested in massage therapy research, and what was it that really sparked the fire for you to start learning more about research? And how long did that take you to feel comfortable reading the research? So we're going to start off today with Bodhi, and I'll let you have a crack at that question.
Yeah, so what sparked my interest was when I worked at the rehab hospital. I was about 3 years after I graduated from massage therapy school, and that was 1995. And working in a multidisciplinary environment, I was faced with many questions and from other practitioners about what I was doing, how I was doing it, and why. And something that at the time my educational program back in Ontario did not address at all. There was hardly ever talk of any research studies. That was in 1993 that I graduated, and so there was a bit of a rude awakening, but a wonderful one. And they had a library there that I could spend a lot of time in, and so that's really where my interest began.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Clint, I'm going to ask you the same set of questions as to what started your endeavor into research.
I think my initial interest started when I was in school, actually, and not unlike Bodhi, the school had hardly any resources at that time. There were no textbooks. I was thinking back about it. There was probably 2 textbooks that were required, and those were in the subjects of anatomy and physiology and kinesiology. So we relied on handouts and packets and notebooks that were given to us, and so that's where it started for me. And then when I began teaching, I realized that I had had a great education, but I didn't know a lot about some of the fundamentals of how things work and what techniques are good for what conditions. And then what the person who really helped me along was Dr. Christopher Quinn, who started a journal club at the Boulder School of Massage Therapy back in 1997. And we'd go over to the library and make copies of articles out of some of the journals there. And that's where it really started for me, was during that time. And then, and I think we've talked about this before in other conferences and webinars, there just, when we started looking into it, there just wasn't a lot being done, and some of the things were a little bit off character, having people that sedentary people do exercises, for example, and then doing 15 minutes of massage on their leg and saying that massage therapy doesn't help with delayed onset of muscle soreness. So it really kind of intrigued me and interests me, and so that I really have a great interest in it, and I think it's a great subject matter for us to be talking about today.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Clint. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And Martha, can you tell me a bit about how you became interested in research?
Well, for me, I would have to say somewhat similar in that I certainly would have questions that came to mind that really arose from my clinical experience. And at one point in my practice, I was getting a lot of referrals from psychotherapists and really working with a lot of clients who were using massage therapy as an adjunct to work that they were doing in psychotherapy. And I was motivated by doing that and feeling a little out of my depth. That motivated me to go back to ed school. And of course, as part of a graduate program, you're kind of required to be more familiar with research and read research. And so I started looking. At that time, there were very few studies on massage. And the studies that I was reading were not particularly good, it seemed to me, had no relationship to clinical practice, as Clint was mentioning. And it really motivated me to both become more research literate, but it also really sparked my interest in developing my own research capacity as well.
Great. Well, thank you. As you can see, each of our speakers has a very unique path, and hopefully one of their stories will inspire you, the listener, as well. So moving on to our next topic, we want to move into putting research into practice. And Clint has prepared a client presentation to share with us in how he moved research into practice. So Clint, I'll turn that floor back over to you.
Okay. Yeah, so this all started with a client who I've been working with for some time. Michelle was a 48-year-old female with a primary diagnosis of fibromyalgia, and who had been through the gamut of all the different practitioners and all the different types of medications that help with sleep and pain and inflammation. And this was a situation or a case where I really learned a lot from this client on the basis of the things that I had been taught in school. You know, when you talk about chronic pain, people, you know, when I was in school, they said, well, just try to give them a full body relaxation massage, and don't do any deep work, and try to be careful with the amount of pressure that you use. And I tried that approach, and it actually made her symptoms and her condition, her situation worse. So we started experimenting with passive position release technique, and that seemed to be something that really worked well for her. The only challenges were that it only gave her relief for a few days. So I began trying to think of other, you know, it's always an issue of economics, and how many times can a person come in to see you per week, and the benefits of that. So I tried to think of other things that she could do when she wasn't receiving treatment to help with the symptoms. And so I started doing a little bit of research work, and discovered that there was some developments in the diagnosis, because I wasn't sure. She'd had several doctors who had diagnosed her using the tender point scale, but found that there was a new diagnosis scale that's based on symptom intensity scale. So that was helpful for her to share with her doctors and see if, and then she was also confirmed by that inclusion of that criteria. So it kind of confirmed her that she really did have it. She wasn't sure if she had fibromyalgia. So, you know, it's a case where I had to, you know, try to find other ways and resources and stuff. And so looking into the literature, there's some studies that have been done on fibromyalgia, and most of those things are done in the drug industry, but exercise seems to be, regular exercise seems, and particularly aerobic exercise seems to help clients who are suffering with fibromyalgia reduce pain, and obviously it improves their overall function. We've also have some evidence now that massage therapy, one of the biggest problems with fibromyalgia is they don't sleep very well. They have sleep disturbances, and so we do have some evidence that massage can enhance or improve sleep, and particularly the deep REM sleep, stage 4 sleep. So that's where I reached to some of the literature to kind of help me find other ways as a clinical practitioner to help this person and find other resources and activities and things that she might be able to do.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Hopefully that will bring that right into the clinic for those of you listening. Next, we're going to jump over to Martha, who has a unique resource for moving practice into research. So Martha, I'll let you explain case 3.3.
Okay. And I'd also like to mention that Bodhi and I, this is a project that we are working together on, and that this has been funded by the Registered Massage Therapist Association of British Columbia. So this is the landing page for the site, and the web address is www.case3.org. Will take you to this page, and what it is, it's a repository. So a repository is kind of like a library of case reports in integrative healthcare, and it's really a resource that can be used in a variety of ways, but I think it's particularly a great resource for practitioners. It is open access, so practitioners can go to the website, look for a case report by discipline or by subject or condition. If you click down at the bottom of the page, it will take you directly to the repository itself, which is right here. And you've got a little search box there at the top where you would type in the name of the condition, You could also type in the name of the discipline. So it could be fibromyalgia and massage, or it could be frozen shoulder and acupuncture, whatever it is you're looking for. And then it will retrieve case reports on that condition. And one of the things that I think is really exciting about case reports is that reading a case report is a way for a practitioner not only to be able to participate in research. I think any motivated practitioner can learn how to write a useful case report. But a good case report is really kind of distilling the story of an individual client and their treatment. So it can be a really helpful way for practitioners. If somebody walks into your office with a condition that you've never treated before, you could go to Case Read3, look it up, and see what other people, other practitioners in your discipline have done and how it turned out. You know, together with perhaps other approaches that might be helpful for that client as well. And to get started, Case Read3 is built on an open access publication model. Generally, in open access publication, the author pays the publication cost, and sometimes those fees can be quite hefty. What we're doing with this, because we would like for this to be widely available and affordable for people, we've decided to work through institutions. And what we're asking institutions to do is to pay a very low annual fee to cover the publication cost for all of their students, faculty, and alumni. And the current price is $289 a year, which is less than the price of a cup of coffee every day. So we think that this is a very affordable open access publication model, and are very excited to have just launched this project and are making it available to people. And currently we have some case reports from the RMTBC case report contest. We've had some support from the Massage Therapy Foundation in the form of case reports that they have encouraged their case report contest winners to submit. We also have some agreements with some various journals to reproduce previously published case reports as well. So we're very excited to be able to offer this to the community.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Martha, for sharing that. It's a great resource
Sure.
to help folks take what they're learning in clinic and then put it out there from others to learn from. So we appreciate that. Next, we're going to move over to Bodhi, who has some great food for thought on research and practice. So Bodhi, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the two quotes up there are common concerns and comments that I see when I'm talking to therapists, both here in BC and around North America, is sort of that attitude of I don't care what the latest research is, I just do what works for me. And the other one is, well, yeah, research is a great tool, but you know, it doesn't really apply to my clinical practice. Through a few ideas that you need to think about when you're trying to apply research for practice. So if we can get the next slide. So the idea that you can take one research paper and that is all you need for your practice is not a good one to have, because all research methods, they're limited in their ability to answer all the questions we have about our therapy and our patients. And so most of the time we need to look at many different papers, and there are different types of papers for different scenarios and different questions. And so you got to think of each question we have, there's one research paper for it. And so how we find the research we want and how we do the research is we can use the PICO acronym or the 5 Ws. And so we want to look at who is the patient, so that's the P. What is the intervention, so how are we going to do it, or application, so when, where, and how. what are the outcomes we're wanting with the patient? So is it pain reduction, more mobility, stress reduction, etc.? And what are we comparing it to? So are we comparing it to other therapies that we might want to do at the same time? So that is sort of the core idea that you need to start off with. And next slide. And so there are many different types of research papers out there, research methodologies, and so a couple of the things that we might want to be looking for are questions that explain the mechanism. So how do things work? So that's the effect, and effectiveness is how does it work in our practice in the real world. Then they can tell us about the reliability of our assessment tools, and they can report on safety. So what is the contraindications that we all learn in school? Are they reliable? And is there, depending on the type of patient you're working with, what's the safety concerns we have? And research in general is a tool that we use, and we need to use it in conjunction with best practices, best available evidence, our clinical knowledge, and the patient values. Now, often the question comes up, well, there's not a lot of research about massage therapy, and so what do I do? How do I practice evidence-based practice, or evidence-informed practice, or how to integrate research into my practice if there's not a lot of research? So the idea that we need to think about there is what's called biological plausibility. So that refers to a proposal of a causal association or relationship between an assumed cause and outcome. So what that means is there has to be a basis that we can build upon, and so that is the biological knowledge that we have through science and research already. And so if we can build our ideas and our ways of practice based on that, and then obviously those assumptions and the theories and the proposals, hypotheses that come out of that need to be tested and to make sure that our assumptions are correct. And another concern that often comes up, and I think I mentioned that already, is that the research that people read, they say, oh, that doesn't apply to my practice, or that doesn't apply to my patients. Yeah, I read this study and I disagree with it. And most commonly, the thought that the misunderstanding that comes out of that is that people don't understand the difference between effectiveness research that we talked about, that is looking at real life scenarios. It's often called pragmatic, and it has what we call external validity, a strong external validity. Or you have the efficacy type of trial, which is more a laboratory type of trial that looks at and tries to explain the mechanisms and has stronger internal validities. And then there's a whole spectrum in between. And if we understand those type of trials for therapies, then we can start to understand why some trials look like they really don't apply to us, but they might have some gold nuggets, and then other trials go, oh, that is amazing, that fits right to the patient that I'm working with. And sort of along with the idea of when we don't have strong research behind us and the biological plausibility, is that we need to shift our explanatory language to fit the current scientific knowledge that we have. Swedish massage was developed 150 years ago, and a lot has changed in the meantime. So shifting our language to utilizing neurophysiology, neuroendocrinology, neuroimmunology type of biological understanding will go a long way in helping the profession A, be honest and be accurate in what we're saying, and B, have better contact and relationship with other health professions. And on that note, this is a chart that came from a study that I just read 2 days ago, and it talks about how We have different risk factors, how that has a mechanism in the body. So if you have the risk factors, chronic stress, social isolation, depression, social economic status, are the inputs into the body, and then the body reacts in the mechanism. So you have the central nervous system signals, you have the neuroendocrine mediators, and you even have molecular mediators. There was a study that just came out from McMaster University about sport massage that looked at genealogical expressions, and then you have the clinical outcomes from there. So there's a lot of research, especially in the biopsychosocial literature, that we can utilize to explain what we do. And this is sort of a pet peeve of mine. When we're talking about research, a lot of people throw around, well, has it been proven, or is there proof for that, or those type of comments. And in research, there's no such thing. There's no proof. There's only proof in math, where you prove your theories. But what we want in healthcare is we want evidence that supports our assertions and shows that there's validity behind them, and that our treatments are effective and safe. Because the words that we use matter when we're talking to our patients, to other practitioners, and to the public at large. And then just a couple of quotes here. In the end, I quite like these two. The reality-based client deserves a reality-based massage. That's by Raymond Zara Trevelyan. And then the second one is, certainty is seductive, wishful thinking is alluring, and an anecdote can be compelling. And I like this because it sort of addresses many things that we talk about in our practices. Certainty sort of goes back to the proof, and wishful thinking is, well, I wish what I'm doing has this effect, or I hope it does. And then anecdote, when this is the anecdotal evidence, can be alluring on its own, but all of this can be an issue, and we need to address each and one of them.
Thank you, Bodhi, for the food for thought and putting this into the clinical practice for us. And this actually really ties well into our next webinar in the series, a great prelude into our webinar, What is Evidence-Informed Practice, where we'll go a little bit more in depth into the PICO approach, as you had mentioned, and I hope that everybody will be able to join us. So I'm going to move on to some tips from the front line, and we're going to have Martha back on the floor here in terms of some tips to help you stay current with the literature. So Martha, I hand it back over to you.
Sure. Thanks. So one of the things that I think is really helpful, obviously reading research takes time, and one thing that you can do to save yourself time, most of you are familiar with PubMed. It's the publicly free available version of the National Library of Medicine, or Medline, that's available online. And one of the things that you can do to save yourself some time is, Deb, if you move your cursor up to the upper right-hand corner where it says Sign In NCBI, you can actually create an account with the parent organization that runs the National Library of Medicine. It's called the National Center for Biological Information, or NCBI. And could we go to the next slide? If you click up there in that corner, it will take you to a page that says Sign In to NCBI. And down kind of at the bottom of the left-hand corner there, you'll see register for an NCBI account. You can set up a free account with NCBI, and then if you have a particular topic that you're interested in keeping up with, so for me, because I'm really interested in oncology massage, instead of having to remember to go and do a search every so often for massage and cancer or massage and oncology, what I can do through my NCBI account is create some search strategies, save those strategies, and then NCBI will run it periodically. You can set it up to run every week. I don't have that much time to keep up with my reading, so I do mine for once a month. And the search strategies that I use are fairly straightforward. I'm very interested in research methodology, so that's one that I run once a month. Massage and cancer, I usually run once a month, also massage and pain. And then the results come directly to my email inbox. I can look through the titles, the authors, I can click on the abstract and read the abstract if I want. And it saves me having to remember to do that. You automatically get the results delivered to your inbox, and then you can scroll through the list of new studies that have come out in the last month and see if there's anything there that you're interested in reading. So that's my time-saving tip.
Thank you, Martha. That hopefully will help everybody keep pace and add a pace that's good for their schedule. So Clint, I know that you put together a couple tips to help us stay current, and I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to you.
Yeah, I just suggested a few of these journals that I've subscribed to before. The Journal of Body Work and Movement Therapy. These are all subscription journals, obviously, and so they charge a fee for usually an annual subscription. Sometimes they're quarterly distributions. Sometimes they have 5 or 6 different issues. It just kind of depends on the journal. But these are just 3 examples of journals that I have subscribed to. They have great articles that are related to our field and also to other alternative and complementary therapies. And then, of course, the other one here is the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. This is a online and open access, and their focus is on 3 different respective areas: research, education, and practice. This is provided by the Massage Therapy Foundation. And the great thing about this is that there's not a subscription. You don't have to pay. The other journals that are on the other page are anywhere from $121 a year to about $300 a year. It just depends on whether or not you have the hard copy sent to you or if you do their electronic copy. It just kind of depends. But the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork is free and open access to anyone who's interested in looking up what articles they have available. The other idea that I had was to, and this is not a new idea, but to join or form a journal club. And I don't call it a journal club. Bodhi and Martha were asking me, how do you get people to attend these things? I titled it a mentorship group, and it's what I did is allow the people that are in the group to pick we met once a month, and they would pick the topic that they were interested in. We'd all read the article. And there's really nothing like, sharing this information from other professionals and having conversation, discussion, and trying to understand certain topics or subjects or conditions. I like collaboration also with other practitioners. Sometimes I have other people come in, like chiropractors and osteopaths, into that group. But I think the secret to a group like that is you have to also teach some technique and do some demonstration of technique. If it's just academic information, text information, I think that's difficult for people. I would agree with Martha and Bodhi that it's not easy to form these clubs or groups, but it's kind of how I got started in my interest into research, and so I kind of go back and fall back on that, and I think it's worthy.
Bodhi and I are in agreement that having some sort of food available is also a great inducement to get people to attend these meetings.
That's right.
When I used to run the one at the school that I taught at, we would actually have like lunches, and we would make it we would have a little bit of social time for people as well. And I think part of the appeal of that, so many of us in private practice, work in a very solitary way. So having an opportunity to get together with your colleagues is always a big positive.
I would agree, Martha. Yeah, I would agree. Well, this slide, what impact has research had on your educational objectives in patient care? Kind of like what Bodhi was talking about, I take great caution when I present topics and content to students these days. I try not to make any kind of false claims or claims that my teachers or mentors share with me that I'm not sure about. I think in this industry, we've perpetuated some belief systems that probably are not completely accurate. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I think some of the challenges that we had in the early days is that we didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have a lot of textbooks. There weren't these journals that focus on specific modalities or techniques or disciplines. So, and I spend more time trying to dig deeper into topics of interest and try to understand as much as I can. And I try to convey and try to anchor, you know, the latest thinking to my students when I am teaching different topics and contents. And I think what's good is that, and Bodhi was talking about it, we don't have exact proof, but it is nice to be able to direct your clients when they say things like, my doctor does not think massage therapy will help my condition. It's nice to be able to hand in an article or something that will help substantiate your position and the therapy that you believe in, and that you know, in clinical practice, that you found that have helped people with certain conditions or situations. So I like that I have that available to me now to be able to provide some level of evidence. It may not be a end-all be-all, but it is nice to be able to direct people towards, you know, research articles that's being done in our field.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for all the tips and for the thoughtfulness that you've put in today. I did want to mention one other resource in terms of resources for evidence-informed practice, and that's our project to enhance research literacy here at ACAC, and it's available at optimalintegration.org. We have a number of different resources on the site, and if you enter in through the Getting Started page, you'll find some resources on evidence-informed practice and training, and also through this you could end up at the Massage Therapy Foundation Student and Faculty Tools page. So I did want to put that out, that the massagetherapyfoundation.org does have some extra student and faculty tools, Massage Therapy Foundation Education Toolbar that helps you to stay current. So hopefully this will put some great tips out there for everybody today and get you all started. So in summary, we've heard from all of our speakers on their unique journey into how they became interested in research, and hopefully that'll inspire some of you to become more involved in research. We've also heard some client examples, putting research into practice, different things we should take into consideration when we're reading research articles, and also some great tips to stay current and to keep this to not be so overwhelming and to keep current on your schedule. So with that in mind, I do want to promote our next webinar, which is November 4th, which, as I mentioned, will delve a bit deeper into evidence-informed practice, where we'll really define what is evidence-informed practice and elaborate on the PICO approach that Bodhi had brought up, and also take you through the search process. So hopefully that will help you all out and you'll be able to join us. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their attendance today, thank all of our speakers, and I will now open the floor up to questions. My colleague Jennifer is online to help us with questions as they come in, and please do feel free to type them into the window on your control panel, and we'll get to as many as possible. So thank you all. So Jennifer, do we have any questions?
Yes, Deb. Hello, everyone. We do have a few that have come through, and let's get right to that list. The first question from our audience is, why is the standing SI joint test, the Gillette test, still used when the supposed stuck joint with hip and torso flexion moves apart with hip ABD movement? There is no real research into the effect of hip ABD on posture and pelvic bone position, and relating this to assessment of patient condition.
I will let one of our speakers take that. Does anybody want to jump in?
Well, I can address that. I think there's two sort of, there's a question and a comment in there. The question is, why do practitioners still use techniques and approaches that are been shown to be not very valid or have strong support behind them? And I think that sort of goes back to how most of us were educated, and not very many were exposed to research or understand how to utilize it, or let alone find it. So that's sort of the biggest issue there. The comment is about the test itself, and so you can listeners can go and look up those tests, and then what you want to look for is you want to look for research as testing validity of that of the assessment test that you use, and some have high, some have low. There's some terminology that you need to get used to, internal, external validity, etc. But as far as that question, I think that it's mainly how we were educated, and that's what needs to change in this profession.
And I'd like to follow up with that, Deb. I don't think this is limited to any one profession or discipline. Translating research into clinical practice is an issue that cuts across every healthcare field. The average amount of time that it takes for something that we find out through research to become widely implemented in practice on average is 17 years, practically like a whole generation. I think that this is one reason why regular reading of literature is very important, and keeping up with your field in terms of attending conferences when you can, because that's often another way that research findings are disseminated. But the whole issue of translation or implementation of research findings cuts across every field in healthcare. It's a huge issue. And in fact, there's a whole relatively new field that's sprung up called implementation science that's attempting to address this issue.
Thank you, Martha. I agree with you, and as an ACAC representative, that we have a number of disciplines here that are all focused on evidence-informed practice and moving research literacy forward. So thank you very much for your comments. And Jennifer, do we have another question?
Yes, we have several, Deb. The next question from the audience, it says, it is of interest that Dr. Stuart McGill and Dr. Hamilton Hall are the ones who write the books in Canada on low back pain and therapy, but both have back pain that has not been successfully addressed. My question is, if these experts have not been successful, how much can you really trust research? Additionally, Diane Lee, who writes the books on pelvic assessment and low back pain, has stated over and over again that the testing is flawed, especially on SI joint and pelvic areas. So what is real and what is relevant? I found the differing of pelvic angles is of great importance on low back pain, but there is no research on this area of assessment.
I'm going to let one of our speakers take that question. Anybody want to jump in?
I'll jump in with that. I think the important thing to keep in mind here is that research is not perfect, but it is one of the best tools that we have for finding out what we don't know. And I think that this kind of disconnect, I would say, between research and clinical practice, for me, that's part of what motivated me to not only become research literate, but actually go in and do research, because some of the studies that I read were absurd to me from a clinical standpoint. And I think that there's a tendency in research, we have what are called levels of evidence, where some types of research are considered to be better evidence than others. I like to think of it more as sort of, we often talk about best available evidence. What research is going to be the best fit for the question that you have? And I think it's important to keep in mind when you're reading research that you want to be what I would call appropriately skeptical, in that just because it's published someplace doesn't mean that it's true, and you should read research with a critical eye and be asking yourself as you're reading, is there another plausible alternate explanation for these findings based on the research that the authors were attempting to answer? using the methods that they did, is there another explanation that fits the data or fits the results that they got? And if there is, you know, particularly if it makes more sense to you clinically, then I would, you know, take that article with a grain of salt. There might be, you know, some other valuable aspect to it, but it may not be the definitive answer to that particular research question. And typically, single studies alone, it's rare that you find an individual study that definitively answers a question. It's much more common that you have a body of evidence that accumulates over time. So as we look at an area and look at it using different research methods, because all of them have something to offer. Some of them are more suited to answering particular kinds of questions. When we, you know, approach an area from a variety of perspectives, we often get a more, you know, complete picture. So, you know, just because one individual study may not be the best at answering a particular question doesn't mean that you want to basically think that all research is bad. That's for kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, and I think sort of furthering on what Martha was saying is that it sort of goes back to the point that I made, that no one study has to be is sufficient. You need to look at variety of fields also. So if we're just looking at back pain as mechanical, you're also limiting yourself. You're not looking at the entire spectrum of what the patient is going through and what's affecting them. And so you need to look at pain science, for example, difference between acute pain and chronic pain, and how does chronic pain develop, or persistent pain, how does that develop? And if we're looking at anatomical differences between people, for example, is looking at the pelvic alignment accurate when you have such a variety between variety of skeletons, you know, and your patients? If you look at every single one of them, there's going to be a significant difference. So is that a valid way of looking at assessing it? So it's assessment is number one. Number two is how you treat it. So it's mechanical, is it psychological, is it sociological, is there a pain mechanism, centralization going on behind it? There's a lot of issues that you need to look at with pain. And to say that, you know, these guys are researching low back issues but haven't cured their own pain, well, maybe they have a type of condition that is not curable. And often we fall into the trap that we need to cure pain, we need to cure people of their pain, but often the best thing we can do is to support them and give them a better functioning life, rather than focusing on just curing it.
I would really second that. That is one of my areas of interest, both clinically and in terms of research. And pain is a very complex condition, as Bodhi was saying. It's multifactorial, and actually, I think that one of the reasons that massage is often so helpful with pain conditions is that massage is a complex intervention that can address people on multiple levels as well.
Well, thank you both for your input. I appreciate that. And Jennifer, do we have some more questions in the queue yet?
Yes, we do. Next, Martha, this is for you. Can anyone submit a case report to the repository, or is this for published articles? And also, does the repository have submission guidelines?
I would say we don't have formal submission guidelines because we're really looking to work through institutions. We're hoping that faculty will be encouraging students to submit, and if these are case reports that students are writing as a senior project or capstone type of project, then they will have had faculty input. So through the faculty involvement, they will have a level of peer review. We would really like to encourage individual authors to submit as well. And I would say just direct for that. I wouldn't say that we have formal submission guidelines, but we do have a collection of learning resources on the site. There is a template there for a structured abstract that I would encourage people to use. And there is an article that I wrote called How to Develop a Useful Case Report that has some good guidelines for developing a case report and writing up the results as well.
Thanks, Martha. We do have another question. Do any of the presenters have a handout that that either of you share with your clients about research evidence? And if so, would you be willing to share it?
I'll try to answer that question. I don't really have a handout, but oftentimes what I do is I make copies of the articles that are related to the person's condition, or I send them a link, or if it's available, the full PDF article itself.
Yeah, what I use is the brochures that the association that I work for developed, and we have conditions brochures that talk about the generalities about the different conditions that we treat, and that it has a couple of research papers quoted on the back of it. That's what we hand out generally to our patients. But if we don't have that, then I just do what Clint does. I have other papers or abstracts that I'll share with them. The Australian Massage Therapy Association did a wonderful review on massage therapy, the evidence around it, and it's freely available. That you can access it on there. So it's AMT, Australian Massage Therapy Association.
Very good.
And this is Martha. I don't have a formal handout that I give clients, but I often talk to clients, particularly when research about any health condition gets reported in the media. A lot of time, research as it gets reported in the popular media tends to be sensationalized somewhat. Does your morning coffee, cause some horrible health condition? Find out. Film at 11. You get that kind of stuff on the media a lot, and it often, when you go and actually look at the study, it's not saying anything even close to that. So I encourage my clients to be sort of appropriately skeptical when reading research, and to, just because you see something reported in the media, you should really go and try to read the study. The Washington Post health section, I think it still comes out on Tuesdays, has a great feature where they often take a recent study and sort of dissect it in a very reader-friendly way. I do the same thing with the regular column that I write for the Massage Therapy Journal, where we look at recent research on massage, and really look at the study, look at the strengths and the weaknesses, and what the take-home message is. What's the relevance to clinical practice here? And I think that's a good question for people to keep in mind when they're reading research: is what's the takeaway here? What is it about the study that is going to be useful to me in terms of my clinical practice? That's really the bottom line, I think, for a lot of research.
Thank you all for sharing that. That's great feedback, and I will put together some of those resources that you all mentioned in the follow-up email to those of you who are listening when our recorded webinar is available. So look for that coming our way. So Jennifer, do we have another question?
We have two I'd like to get through before we close. The next question is from the audience. When a client came to me with bruises from a cupping session from another therapist, I began to seek evidence for the effectiveness and safety of cupping. Only anecdotal evidence or testimonial statements were available. Frustrating.
Would somebody like to take that question?
I think that's a go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I share your frustration.
Same here. I share the same frustration.
I think that's a good reason for writing case reports. For example, if you felt that this was an adverse response to treatment, that's really worth reporting in the literature, and that's a perfect example of something that's a good subject for a case report. I also think it's a good example of how, you know, things that come in clinical practice are often the inspiration for doing research on something.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Martha. That's a perfect example of where we can move our practice into research. Jennifer, did we have one more question that you said you wanted to get to? Yeah, before we close up.
One last question. This question has to do with the traditional hierarchy of evidence-based practice and where the speakers feel we should, as massage therapists, look for the best direction to guide our practice. Case reports are on the bottom of the allopathic model of research, but I feel that sometimes they are the most rich source of information for all of us. Thoughts?
Well,
I think we started that. I think reports are the easiest for us to read, and we get the most out of them as practitioners. So I would agree to some degree that they're the hierarchy of this information, that they should be placed higher up. But the challenge is that we do not have a great number of those case reports, although it sounds like Bodhi and Martha are creating a great repository where people that don't, you know, necessarily win the case contests that are offered may have an opportunity to submit their case reports too. So yeah, I would be in agreement that I think it probably should move up a little bit, the case report. I think it's an important one for us. I found that students find those much easier to read and utilize in practice.
I think the important thing to keep in mind is that hierarchy is based on the measure of value there is the ability to link cause and effect. And case reports are not strong in terms of linking cause and effect. You can't necessarily generalize widely from a single case report because it's, you know, one individual, you know, getting a particular treatment at a point in time. So it's not the strongest form of linking cause and effect. It is, though, I think, a type of research that's immediately accessible to practitioners, that makes sense, that, you know, often there's something that you can take away. If it's a well-written case report, there should be a good description of the treatment that was involved that is potentially useful for any practitioner in that field, or in that discipline. And I think the value of them often comes from when we start to aggregate them, which is part of the reason that we started this repository project and actually started working on it several years ago. I don't know that it's a matter of them needing to be like higher up. I personally, I don't like the level of evidence model. I prefer what's called the circle of evidence. And there's a great article by Hal Wallach and some of his colleagues. That's W-A-L-A-C-H. If you want to look it up. It's he really talks about different types of research methods complementing each other. For example, qualitative and quantitative. Each of them is really good at answering a particular type of research question, and it's when you put them together that you get a fuller, more complete picture. And I think that's true with case reports as well. When we begin to aggregate case reports, I think that they become stronger as a type of evidence.
Yeah, it all goes back to you know, you got to look at many different types of research, really many different types of sources to get a complete picture, and it's all the research it can be good at a certain level, depending on what you need it for, how you want to apply it, and case reports are definitely the most sort of clinically not relevant, but clinically applicable, because it's a practitioner writing about what they did in their clinic, and so yeah, I support what both Martha and Clint said.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all your feedback. This has been a wonderful discussion in terms of evidence and research. And with that note, I hope that you all will join us for the next in the series, which is looking more at evidence-based practice, evidence-informed practice. And I want to thank all of our speakers for being with us today. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening and joining us today. So with that, we'll end the webinar, and have a great day. Thanks so much.